I remember the first time I walked into Applebee's, the prestigious restaurant that boasted of its mouth-watering dishes and impeccable service. It was supposed to be the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to work at a place where dreams came true and where success was plated and served to perfection. Little did I know that behind the gleaming facade of this culinary palace lurked a sinister secret. My name is Sarah, and I was just a struggling college student when I landed a job as a waitress at Applebee's. The place had an aura of elegance that left patrons in awe, from the plush, crimson carpets that absorbed every step, like a silent whisper, to the crystal chandeliers that bathed the restaurant in a soft amber glow. It was, without a doubt, the most beautiful restaurant I'd ever seen. The first day on the job was both exciting and intimidating. The staff was friendly, welcoming me with smiles that seemed a touch too forced. The manager, Mr. Crawford, was a tall, silver-haired man who exuded an air of authority that sent shivers down my spine. He handed me my uniform, a crisp white shirt and a black skirt, and led me on a tour of the restaurant. As he showed me around, Mr. Crawford's voice took on a hushed tone as he gestured to various sections of the restaurant. "This," he said, pointing to a corner table draped in white cloth, "is where our most esteemed guests dine. Remember, discretion is of the utmost importance here." The feeling of being watched washed over me as I stared at the empty table. I quickly nodded and tried to shake off the unease. After all, I was new and I didn't want to appear jumpy in front of my new boss. The weeks went by, and I settled into my role as a waitress at Applebee's. My colleagues were amiable, and the customers, despite their discerning tastes, were generally polite. But as the days turned into nights, I began to notice something peculiar about the restaurant. Every night, like clockwork, at exactly 8:30 p.m., a palpable shift occurred. The atmosphere within Applebee's changed. The laughter and chatter of patrons would slowly fade, and a heavy silence would descend upon the restaurant. It was as if the air itself had thickened, making it hard to breathe. The first time I experienced it, I assumed it was a mere coincidence. But it happened again and again. I wasn't the only one who noticed it either. My fellow employees exchanged nervous glances as we navigated this eerie transformation night after night. As the weeks turned into months, I couldn't shake the feeling that Applebee's held a secret, one that lurked just beneath the surface. I tried to discuss it with my colleagues, but they brushed it off, insisting it was just our imagination playing tricks on us. "It's the ambiance," they would say, "part of what makes Applebee's special." One evening, during a particularly unsettling shift, I approached Mr. Crawford, unable to contain my curiosity any longer. "Mr. Crawford, what happens every night at 8:30 p.m.?" I asked, my voice trembling. He regarded me with a stern expression before finally sighing. "You've noticed it, haven't you?" he replied in a low voice. "It's best if you don't ask too many questions, Sarah. Just focus on your job, and everything will be fine." But I couldn't let it go. My curiosity gnawed at me like a relentless beast, and I couldn't resist the urge to uncover the mystery that shrouded Applebee's. So, one fateful night, I decided to stay late, hiding in the shadows and watching as the clock approached 8:30 p.m. As the seconds ticked away, I felt a cold sweat on my brow. The patrons at the tables around me seemed oblivious to the impending change, but I was hyper-aware, my heart pounding in my chest. And then it happened. At exactly 8:30 p.m., the lights dimmed, casting long, eerie shadows across the restaurant. The once cheerful atmosphere grew oppressive, suffocating. I watched in disbelief as the faces of the customers twisted into expressions of fear and despair. The waitstaff moved mechanically, their smiles replaced with vacant stares. I couldn't take it any longer. Panic surged through me, and I rushed out from my hiding place to confront Mr. Crawford. I found him near the bar, his expression haunted as he stared at the unfolding scene. "What is happening here?" I demanded, my voice trembling. Mr. Crawford turned to me, his eyes wide with terror. "It's the curse of Applebees," he whispered. "We are all prisoners here, Sarah. Every night, at 8:30 p.m., we relive the same horrors over and over again. We cannot escape." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It sounded like the ramblings of a madman. But then, I looked around and saw the anguish etched on the faces of my colleagues and the patrons. They were trapped in a never-ending nightmare, and I had unwittingly become a part of it. Desperation gripped me as I tried to flee the restaurant, but the doors were locked, and no matter how hard I pushed, they wouldn't budge.
I turned to Mr. Crawford, tears in my eyes.
"Please, there must be a way out of this." He shook his head, his voice trembling. "There is no escape, Sarah. We are all doomed to repeat this nightmarish cycle." And repeat it did. Night after night, I watched in horror as the same events unfolded. The darkness, the despair, the unrelenting dread. It was as if Applebees itself was a malevolent force, feeding off the suffering of those trapped within its walls. As the weeks turned into months, I became a hollow shell of my former self. The fear and hopelessness consumed me, and I knew that I was slowly losing my sanity. I couldn't bear to look at the faces of my colleagues and the patrons, all of whom were trapped in this never-ending nightmare. Then, one night, as the clock struck 8:30 p.m., something changed. I felt a strange sensation wash over me. I turned to Mr. Crawford, my eyes burning with a newfound resolve. "We can't give up," I said, my voice steady. "There must be a way to break this curse, to free ourselves from this torment." He stared at me, disbelief etched on his face, but then a glimmer of hope flickered in his eyes. Together, we began to investigate the history of Applebees, searching for any clue that could explain the curse that had befallen us. What we discovered was a dark and twisted tale. It turned out that Applebees had been built on the site of an old plantation, a place with a long history of suffering and cruelty. The land itself seemed cursed, and it appeared that the restaurant had unwittingly awakened the malevolent spirits that had been bound to it. Armed with this knowledge, Mr. Crawford and I sought the help of a local historian who specialized in paranormal phenomena. But to our surprise, tells that there was no paranormal activity at Applebees. The curse was not supernatural, but psychological, a manifestation of the collective trauma that had haunted the land for generations. Determined to break the curse, we devised a plan. We gathered the staff and the patrons, and together we confronted the darkness that descended upon the restaurant every night at 8:30 p.m. We refused to give in to the fear and despair, And slowly but surely, the malevolent force that had tormented us began to weaken. As the weeks passed, lifted, and the atmosphere in Applebee's returned to normal, the once haunted faces of my colleagues and the patrons regained their vitality, and the oppressive darkness that had loomed over us dissipated. Applebee's was no longer a place of dread, but a restaurant once again filled with laughter, chatter, and the clinking of glasses. Mr. Crawford and I had broken the curse that had plagued us, and we were finally free. But I could never forget the horrors I witnessed within those walls. The experience has left a permanent mark on my soul, a reminder that even the most prestigious places can harbor dark secrets. Applebee's may have been a place of elegance and refinement, but it was also a place of unspeakable horrors, a place where time itself seemed to stand still, and the nightmarish past clung to the present like a shadow that could never be shaken. So, the next time you walk into a prestigious restaurant, remember that not everything is as it seems. Behind the polished facade may lie a chilling secret, waiting to be uncovered by those who dare to look beyond the surface. And the horrors that lurk in the shadows may be far more terrifying than anything you could ever imagine.